Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. So in this series I take a look at the last 10 board games that I've played and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now this episode is going to be slightly different because I'm talking about 11 games rather than the 12 because I played two new ones on the same day and I didn't want to overspill into the next episode. Now before I get started on today's episode, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so at number 11 I have Paragons Age of Champions. Now this is an upcoming Kickstarter game and that was of course provided to me by the publisher. Now this is a dueling game. It's actually plays up to 3 players, which is quite unusual. As you'd expect, you have your your hero class. You could be like a mage, like a ranger or a warrior, and you have a partially constructed deck made up of those class types. But before the game starts, you also do a draft where you're using these kind of neutral cards to pad out your deck. After you finish your draft, you're going to cull down your deck to a fixed number of cards and then commence the dueling. And you have this kind of layout system where you are allocating your kind of summons to different spots on the board where you can block each other and stuff, cast big spells, all the stuff you'd expect with a kind of a Magic dueling style game. Now this is quite similar to Magic the Gathering, but I suppose the USP about this one is that it is a self-contained box, so that you're not paying to win this style game. These type of games aren't generally for me, and this was an example of that. I'm not too interested in constructing a deck before playing. I'd much rather have a fixed deck and just say, you're the ranger, you get this bunch of cards, you're the warrior, you get this bunch of cards, and then get going. I'm not kind of interested in constructing a deck as part of the game because I'd rather just jump straight in. So not quite for me. I suppose it's quite a niche audience because I think if you like these styles of games, you're probably going to be a fan of Magic the Gathering anyway. That being a lifestyle game, you're not really going to find the need to own this one, I feel. But maybe I'm wrong on that. These games are massively popular, but I'm just struggling to find the audience for this one. At number 10, I have the Ming Dynasty. Now, this is one that's quite hard to explain because the rules are quite fiddly, and the rule book itself was one of the worst I've ever seen. We really did have to work quite hard to force our way through this one. But it's kind of an old school Euro, a bit of area control there, a bit of card drafting. Essentially, you're trying to spread your presence on this map by drafting these different kind of transport cards. It did have quite a cool mechanism where you could deploy your kind of pawns on these different spots, which would kind of broaden your scope to draft the cards that you want. But you had to be able to deploy from these different zones to put them onto the board in the first place. Then you can even allocate them to different spots within the spots. It was quite a convoluted and fiddly game that I'm not quite sure resonated with me. I didn't really feel like the rules fixed in place, and I couldn't really extract the fun for this one because it was such a chore to work your way through the rules and how the mechanisms actually worked. So, I think there is a game here, and there probably is a somewhat decent game here, but I think the game really did hamstring itself by not being able to convey the rules cohesively, and that really did hurt the game. So it also went on quite long. I think it outstayed its welcome by 30% or so. So I couldn't really recommend this one with so many other games out there. It just tried a bit too hard to be different, I think, and just ended up being a bit of a mechanical mess. At number 9, I have Flamecraft, so a very popular game from last year. It's kind of I'd say a medium weight, maybe a medium lightweight worker placement game as you are deploying your workers onto this kind of street, I suppose, and these shops are popping up. You're playing these very cute dragon cards in order to get extra abilities. And essentially it's a contract fulfillment game. Collect a bunch of resources, cash them in for these public contracts, and hopefully get a lot of points for doing so. Now these kind of medium lightweight worker placement games normally leave me feeling very numb. I don't get much from them because I always feel they're somewhat rinse and repeat. This one, despite having a lovely aesthetic, left me feeling the exact same way. I just don't really feel this game does anything different to the glut of other games of a similar ilk. So despite looking wonderful, the artwork is quite spectacular. a real charming kind of aesthetic to it, some really funny names and some pretty cool images. But the gameplay itself left me wanting for more. And I'm not quite sure why this one really did take off so much, because I think the gameplay is average at best. So that is Flamecraft at number 9. At number 8, I have Kenin. So Kenin, a game I really didn't know anything about. My brother picked this one up and we played it the other day. Now this is a kind of a hidden ability style game, as you have a fixed deck of cards. Each of these cards have special powers or strengths on them, and then you're deploying them to these different battlefields. But similar to a game like Between Two Cities, you are always competing with your neighbours on either side. I'm trying to compete over these particular zones. The zones have special restrictions and powers on them, which can change your strategy. And it's all about trying to play the cards in the right order, trying to get into the head of your opponent to understand what they're likely going to be playing, a bit of mind reading, a bit of bluffing. And this is really one of those games that would reward repeated plays as you become more familiar with the characters and understand how they interact with one another. Yeah, definitely think a meta game would build up here if you invested the time into it. Now, I thought the game was fine, and again, I thought there is a game there if you really look for it. I'm not quite sure if I'm willing to put in the time to really get the most out of this one, because I think there are better games out there that are quite similar. Games like Condottiere pop to mind. And even if you want like a character-driven card game or an ability-driven card game, I'd probably rather play something like Valbara as well. So this one, I think it's fine. I can see why it has kind of faded into obscurity, because this is a game that's 8 years old now and nobody is talking about it. So not bad, but nothing special either. At number 7, I have Dominion. So despite all the games that I've played, this is the first time I've played the ever famous Dominion. So it really is the grandfather of the deck building style of game. This one really is back to basics, just collect cards, try to get currency and then trade those currency in for points. Now this game is remarkably smooth. Turns are lightning quick, which I definitely think are massive or big upside for this game. And it actually had one of the coolest catch-up mechanisms that I've seen, because when you are spending this money to get those points actually go into your hand as kind of dead cards, I suppose. And I really like the way that works, because if you are starting to steamroll it and get really ahead on points, your deck isn't going to be as efficient as someone who hasn't got as many points cards in their hand. So definitely one of the coolest catch-up mechanisms that I've ever seen. Now I have only played with the base game, and it is very basic, and I'm trying to put my mind in a place where this was new at the time. I could see how this really did kind of take off, but now I've played so many deck builders that have kind of cherry-picked all the best bits from Dominion. This one just kind of feels like, well, I've seen it all before. But I did like the purity of it. I would be intrigued to try some of the better rated expansions to see how much it is elevated. But it's a game that I can definitely appreciate. I can see how influential it is, but deck building isn't my thing anyway, and if I'm going to play deck builders, I'm probably going to play something a bit more modern. So that is Dominion, a good game, and I'm finally glad I've played it after all these years. At number 6, I have my Shelfie. So this is a puzzly kind of tile placement game, as you are filling up a kind of a Kallax shelf, I suppose, full of all these different tokens and building patterns, trying to score points on different criteria. The drafting system in this one was quite cool. It reminded me a bit of the game called Citrus, where you have a big communal grid of these tiles, and then you can basically slide a bunch of tiles depending on different restrictions, and then put them into your board in a certain order. So I did like that drafting system. It did kind of elevate it a little bit from a fairly basic kind of like a puzzly style game, but it was good. And I did like the fact that the boards themselves are vertically stacked, almost like a Connect 4 board. So you do have that gravity aspect. When you're placing these tiles, they are sinking to the bottom, which again adds another wrinkle to the gameplay. And it was perfectly fine, perfectly inoffensive, and a game that's doesn't take too long. And I kind of like these puzzly style games anyway, so I'm never really going to turn down a game like this. But I have played better ones, but I've certainly played worse ones as well. So that is my Shelfie at number 6. At number 5, I have Forever Home. Now, this is a game that came from nowhere for me because this was sent to me by the publisher. I knew nothing about it really, and it was surprisingly good. So this is another puzzly style game, fairly abstract in the way that it works, where you are essentially drafting these little dog tokens, putting them on this little grid, and trying to puzzle them out, matching these scoring cards. But the twist on this one is that when you score one of those scoring cards, you are removing the tokens, or at least one or two of the tokens from that pattern, and then putting them on these different scoring categories to score extra points. So it was quite cool how the game would almost like kind of metamorphosize as the game goes on, and you could kind of build patterns, take things off, and that will build a new pattern, and so on. So you really did kind of flow very nicely. And this is like a true efficiency puzzle. You don't want to waste any movement in this game at all. Very simple mechanically, where all you're doing is drafting the tokens, you're drafting a new scoring card, or you are moving an existing dog on the board already. So you do have a little bit of leeway to move things that you've already placed, which I thought was a really nice touch, but you're doing that at the expense of efficiency. Lovely look, again, another game that looks very charming, gorgeous artwork. And again, another game that's perfectly inoffensive, very quick. I mean, this is like a 20-minute game. It almost feels slightly too quick because when you get the ball rolling, the game ends quite abruptly. So be prepared for that. But I mentioned in my review that it's a fairly easy house rule to change that if you want to play with a higher objective or a higher amount of scorecards to prolong the game a little bit more, to sink your teeth into that pattern building. But yeah, I like this one a lot. It's gone down really well with who I've played it with, and I'll play it some more for sure. So that is Forever Home at number 5. Okay, so we actually have 4 recommendations this episode. So 4 commendations coming here. The first of which, at number 4, is Wild Tiled West. Now, if you were to say to me that I would give quite a strong recommendation to another polyomino game, I would probably call you crazy, because polyomino games, as you know, have been done to exhaustion, but this one has kind of taken it to the next level, because not only are you filling up your board of polyomino shapes, trying to cover certain regions, trying to cover up negative points, all those things you'd expect, all these tiles have a bunch of different things on them as well. Like, for example, they could have cows on them, which you are trying to wrangle to get points, or you have like bandits and sheriffs, which you are kind of using to counteract each other and collecting these bullets to shoot the bandits in the same row or column. You're collecting these ace cards. So it has quite a cool thematic tie to this one. And I've mentioned before that I tend to like these polyomino games where the polyomino part of the game is like the base level, but you're playing a game on top of that as well. So you have that layered kind of gameplay, which I think works really well here. Lovely aesthetics. Again, the theme comes through quite nicely. The actual way you draft the tiles is different in this one as well, because you are actually rolling dice, placing them on these kind of really cool game trays where all the different tiles are sat. And then you can draft from the same kind of row on column where these dice have been placed. So, you know, you have got some quite strong restrictions here. And even you've got other things as well, such like a little powers you can use and utilise, hidden objectives, and so on. So you've definitely got a lot to sink your teeth into here, and a lot of different kind of point scoring categories to try and mull over. So that is Wild Tiled West, a really nice kind of family weight plus game that I would recommend for sure. At number 3, I have Forest Shuffle. So I'm pretty sure any other episode this game could be a number 1 easily, because this is a fantastic set collection game where you are really tying together a bunch of sets at the same time. Very simple card drafting, either taking them from face down from the top of the stack or from this communal pool, because in order to play cards you need to pay other cards. So, and I love the way that when you pay for these cards with other cards, those cards that you paid with are going into that shared pool, ready to be drafted by the other players. So you have some kind of passive player interaction there, which I really like. You have to be quite careful about what you give up, because those cards could be very important, and they're kind of key piece to their strategy. And tons of different ways to score points here. All the cards kind of cross-contaminate and score with each other. And it's another kind of efficiency game, as you don't want to be wasting cards where you could be extracting more points by playing other cards. Now, I did hear some comments on my video of this one that there's complaints of imbalance, there's complaints of it going on too long. I haven't felt that at all. From what I've seen, yes, some cards are worth more than others, but you normally have to pay more cards to play them. And I suppose the scarcity in order to get the most from them are thinner in the deck. So I don't really see a problem here. It's all about trying to score as much as you can. And hell, if there is a category that are worth more points, then be sure you get your fair share of that cake, so of the pie. So yeah, I think this game is one of the best set collection games I've played in a long time. It's going to be a candidate for a top 10 game of the year, maybe even top 5, and certainly a top 3 card game. I think it is that good. So that is Forest Shuffle. Check out my review because I've done quite a comprehensive one, and it's already been uploaded. At number 2, I have The Rich and the Good. So I've been waiting for a long time for this one to get delivered to me. It's actually a reprint of an older game back from 2008. Now this is an economic game, a commodity speculation game, as you're trying to buy stocks low, sell them high, and manipulate that stock market in your favor. Now the way you do that in this game is very cool because you have a bunch of cards that are positioned between you and your neighbours. So obviously people on the other side of the table can't really see what you can see. So you have a fairly accurate knowledge of what these stocks could be worth, but of course your opponents could have the polar opposite of that and could really tank the stocks that you're looking to raise. And all you're doing is you're choosing to buy 1 to 3 stocks, sell 1 to 3 stocks, and it has this twist where at certain points in the game you want to be stashing money away, because if you do not stash this money away, then you're going to fall behind, and the player who's kind of donated the least amount of money will be automatically eliminated from the game. So it almost has this reverse system to a game like High Society, which adds a whole new dimension to the game. Flows wonderfully, extremely simple rule set, and it's probably one of the best styles of games like this that I've seen. I've played a ton of them, your Acquires, your Raccoon Tycoons, and your Bear Raids. This one I think is the best one, and ironically it's the simplest one as well. That is The Rich and the Good. Hopefully I'll get a review of that one up very soon. And finally, at number 1, I have Dragon Keepers by Michael Menzel, actually. So this is another very light card game that is deceptively deep. So all you're doing in this game is you're trying to play a certain amount of these dragon cards, depending on this book configuration that's on the table. But those books are basically the reverse side of the deck that you're drawing from. And one will say a number and one will say a dragon type. And that is going to be what you're trying to play in order to get points. But the twist on this one is that when you're drafting these cards, that book state is constantly going to change. And you have one chance to manipulate that book state and then hopefully play some cards out to score points. The way you score points in this game is very interesting because you are kind of taking these little amulet pieces, and when you get 3 of them, they'll create this perfect circle, and then you'll get a gem to put in the center of it, which is kind of a random denomination of points. And there's other scoring categories you can get as well, such as these golden eggs, and if you have the majority, you'll get some bonus points. And so on. And there's further restrictions as well, because once you play, I think it's your 3rd set of dragon cards out there, one of your sets can no longer be played. So it does have this kind of chicken mechanism where, when do I want to give up on scoring a certain type? And you are even incentivized to do that, because as soon as you've played your 4th type of dragon, then you get quite a hefty chunk of points for doing so. So again, that push and pull of, do I want to keep my options open, or do I want to go for those points and hopefully do without playing those other types? Check out my review for this one. I think it should be uploaded by now. I was blown away with this one. Instantly fell in love with it. And it's definitely one of those games where when you first play it, you're not quite sure where the gameplay lies, but the more and more you play it, you kind of think, oh, I've made mistakes here. I should have done this. I should have done this. I should approach it this way. And those are the kind of games that sing to me and stick around. Very pure rule set, again, simple as just drafting cards, changing the book if you want to, and then playing cards out and hopefully scoring some points. So yeah, mechanically, beautifully simple, good depth, good player interaction, good turn angst, and yeah, all wrapped up in a 20-minute package that looks beautiful as well. So yeah, definitely very, very impressed with Dragon Keepers, and that's 2 fantastic card games that I've played in the last couple of weeks was with Forest Shuffle and Dragon Keepers. So yeah, quite spoilt in 2023 so far. So there we have it, that concludes the video. It's been a joy talking about some of these games. I've been very lucky this last month or so to play some absolute crackers. Now if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.